Hey guys, I'm DN, spoken label, back in the house. Yes, Sunday evening. Yes, it's been a cold, cold day today. That's why I've got a jacket on because I'm absolutely freezing. So, but anyway, we are over to another part of the world today. And I've not actually asked my guest yet today how warm it is where they are, but I'm presuming it's probably fairly chilly. So we've got a fantastic lady with us today. Now, this is rare. I've been looking for this podcast for a couple of weeks now. We have an art historian with us of Asian art. Orna, now, Orna, you're going to have to tell me how you pronounce your surnames, and I do apologise for this. So before we start, how do you pronounce your surname? Make sure I get this right.
My surname is Tsultem,
Tools. Oh,
Orna
that's
Tsultem.
the tools. That's brilliant. Okay, sorry about that. I should have asked you before we started recording, but yeah, I do apologise. Yeah, but I've been referred over by owner's agent, who I've dealt with several times before, and I'm not going to name the lady because I will embarrass her endlessly. But she put me in contact with Orna because she thought I would really have a good time talking to her about this curation what she's just done of an exhibition over in Venice, and I've seen a lot of the pictures online. It's fascinating stuff this is. So I've been looking forward to this for a few weeks now. Now, Orna,
Mm.
before we start, obviously, we need to look at the background where all your creativity came from. Now, I know in your case, certainly your father was a massive influence on you and your mother as well. But tell us more about that before we start.
Mm. Oh, well, hi everyone, and thank you for your invitation to come to your program. It's my
Pleasure.
pleasure.
Same here.
Indeed, it's a cold, cold weather, but we're going to talk about beautiful art today, so it's very exciting. I'm coming from Mongolia, where I was born and raised. And as you mentioned, my father was a painter and a very celebrated artist in Mongolia, who was very active in the past century. And my personal interest in art really comes from the family history. I grew up in the family of artists and grew up looking at beautiful paintings and the progress, how they were coming to become a beautiful works of art. And certainly it influenced my own interest in art. I myself don't make paintings, but I write about them certainly, and I learn about the history of them.
Yeah, you can see that now. People research you straight away with it. They will see you have done a number of books on art
Mhm.
history. Now, the most recent one, which I've had certainly a good chunk of this afternoon, and I really enjoyed it, was A Monastery on the Move, Art and Politics in Later Buddhist Mongolia. Now, oh, look at it. Everyone's got the video on today. Let's see. Ola's actually showing the book to us then. It was a fascinating book. I learned from reading it on Amazon this afternoon, I learned a lot about that. And from not necessarily a field I knew a lot about, but I did really enjoy it. So tell
Mhm.
us about the background of this book then, before we go into the exhibition.
Mhm. So this is a historical study of 17th to early 20th century period in Inner Asia. So this is area where China, Mongolia, Tibet are located with political connections among themselves and alliances, and religion, Buddhism, and art and culture. They sort of developed together. Political ambitions of different rulers, emperors in China and Khangs in Mongolia, and as well as Tibetan Dalai Lamas. So my book is about a monastery, which was a mobile, portable monastery, an interesting phenomenon where the entire city-like settlement uh, was dismantled and moved many times. And the protagonist was a descendant of Genghis Khan, and he was enthroned as a ruler and a important spiritual leader of the Mongols in 1639 when he was only 5-year-old child.
Mm,
So
yeah.
it's interesting. Yeah, and his family erected him a yurt for this child, and this yurt developed as his main seat, main monastery. Many foreigners came to this monastery, and they named it Urga. And it was a main trade location between Russia and China. And so it often appears in travel books from historical people, such as Haslund in Denmark and Larsen in Sweden and Roy Chapman Andrews in the United States and many other visitors to Urga in late 19th century and early 20th century. And so this monastery was first as a yurt, but developed as a big settlement and moved from north borders to southern borders across really the country over 30 times until it settled in northern place where now the capital of Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar is there. And it had many beautiful temples and architecture, and lots of arts were made in Urga. We have records of artists in Urga, but it was very little known history until I sort of studied from artistic perspective and making the names of artists known and talking about their artworks, their paintings and sculptures. The main protagonist, the founder of this place, was actually a sculptor himself, and he built nice bronze sculptures with gilded bronze sculptures, which are still in the museums in Mongolia. And
Brilliant.
so the story is about this main sculptor, Ranabazar is his name, and his seat which moved and then stopped moving, and the way the Mongols became allied with Tibetan lamas and the Qing court, the Manchurian court emperors were also part of all this political game in the region.
Brilliant. Did you find, obviously, 'cause this sort of nature based this sort of book, it would take a lot of research. Did you find that you were getting surprised by any elements of your research that you when you got things came up and you go, oh, I didn't realize that or anything like that?
Oh, exactly. So it was a very long research, starting from PhD studies and when I was at UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley,
Hmm.
and fantastic scholar of Chinese art, Patricia Berger, who herself had a Mongolian exhibition in 1995 at Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. And she took very strong interest in Mongolia and connections with China and Tibet. And studying with her and then writing my dissertation and then developing it into a book took me over 10 years.
But I can
Long.
believe that. I can believe that, Doctor, straight away. When you're looking at
Yeah.
like you've shown us people in the video, so you can see the size of the book itself. It's not
Mhm.
a sort of book, and you'd admit this yourself. You could have knocked this out in 18 months straight away. It's a life's work, that book straight away.
Yeah. And the more I digged into the history, the more I realized how complex it was.
Oh, I can fully
Many,
believe you that. Yeah, it's nature of the beast, isn't it? Sometimes where you think
yeah,
yourself, it could be quite a nice project to do, and it would take that long. And 10 years, you just said it
yeah,
yourself, 10 years this project took, and I
yeah.
suspect by the end of it, you probably sat there thinking, "Wow, I'm exhausted."
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
And I still feel like there's so much still to research and understand because it's such a complicated, long history of this man, Zanabazar, who sort of part of this political alliance and political rising of Tibetan Dalai Lama's institution in 1645 in Lhasa in Tibet and Qing emperors all were sort of vying for power, and art was part of also this political ambition. And they were all connected. So all these people were connected and traveled. And so a lot of surprises during my research. I traveled to China to do some research and looking at images that my protagonist, Zanabazar, gifted to his friend, emperor of China at that time, Kansi, Manchurian man, Kansi emperor, and just finding out a lot of stuff that was not known. But most interesting, I will say, on the one important part of this research was that realizing how texts and archival records, they tell one linear story and what is sort of people wanted to record and people wanted to pen down, However, the oral history, the transmissions, people what were known among the people and recorded in documents or in art, in architecture, the way art speaks about truth of the time was different story.
I can believe you
So,
there. I can believe you there. Definitely with that. Obviously, like it's nature of the beast again. I mean, we've done the same twice now, but obviously, when this book was completed, you said yourself, like there's more you could have done. So this you could quite easily do a volume two, couldn't you? Really, possibly in the future.
okay, yeah.
Oh, I can
And it
believe
just
you.
made me just understand the importance of art beyond the aesthetical appreciation, beyond museums, but it's part of the history making and how understanding of art actually helps us to understand the times and the milieu and the period and the politics. More so than text. We rely on documents and rely on understanding of text, but art is also very much understanding of art also needs to be done beyond art history alone.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you because we've quite famously over in England or Manchester where I am, we've got a painter called Ellis Lowry, and he's famous for his matchstick men and matchstick, etc. But that was a massive reflection of the way life was back at the beginning of the 20th century. So researching this, yes, I can see the similarities in that in a very different way. It
Mhm,
shows where each environment, same with text as well, it inspires the creative person, I think, in different ways the way the life goes. So yeah, I agree.
mhm,
Obviously, beyond this book, then we're not here to talk about the book, but it's been a fascinating chat itself. Was obviously you've just completed an exhibition over in Venice over
mhm,
Mongol Zerag, the art of resistance. So I want to
mhm,
talk about which is the bulk of this podcast today, really. But
mhm,
first of all, then, when you'd completed the last book, A Monster on the Move, did you
mhm,
know this exhibition was going to come next?
mhm, mhm. Yes, I do research in two areas.
Mm,
Uh, I do study of Buddhist art, and Mongolian Buddhist art is very rich in the Buddhist history, but also I do much of my work is also in contemporary art and understanding how the global contemporary art embraces Mongolia and how Mongolian art is contributing towards global contemporary art is very part of my research. And this exhibition, I started thinking about it um, as we are developing a sort of new a celebration of my father's centenary in 2024. So I started thinking and doing some research about the period when my father was very active, which is 1950s, 60s, and 70s, so past century, and socialism and post-socialism,
mm.
and so how this exhibition came about.
Yeah, it's 'cause the exhibition itself, obviously, we need to clarify with people there. The Mongol and Zagrak, The Art of Resistance, is not just your father's work. It also covers three other artists' work. And you're going to have to tell me how you pronounce these names, unfortunately. So I'm going to make a complete fool of myself.
Certainly,
With
yes.
all due respect to anybody listening here.
Yes, certainly. So my father, Orna Tsultem, is one of the four artists I showed in this exhibition in Venice. The second artist, the three other artists are a younger generation who are very active and prominent in Mongolian contemporary art scene. So it's Abatar Zorik, Basanjev, and Urje. Urje is a woman artist among the four of them. And they all are connected through this one tradition called Mongol Zorak, translated as Mongolian picture, Mongolian painting. And the history of it goes back to times of socialism and times of my father, and then it continues until today. And so I wanted to see this kind of narrative, how the resistance, art becomes the language of resistance in art.
Yes, I agree with you completely with the artist. And it's fascinating because like if people would research this, they will see, like I said before, they've all come from the generation after your father. And it's like I've read the notes on this before, and I've completely agreed with what you said here with this loss. Because obviously, like your father itself obviously was in the generation of the height of state socialism in Mongolia. And
Mhm.
these three artists, all of which, like I said, were born in 1977, 79, and 83, all come from, like I said, a generation after. And it's where the resistance is quite different. So, what made you want to put the four of them together in one exhibition?
Mhm. So it's a part of my new research, which will be coming out as a new book in the near future. Uh,
We'll talk about that later because I always ask at the end of the podcast, what next?
yes.
And good, you've answered my next question already there.
But the idea is when I'm researching about the past century and socialism, it turns out that the socialist realism, which developed across the Soviet bloc and socialist countries as the mainstream of culture, right? We find socialist realism in China, in Mongolia, as well in Eastern Europe, and as far as Latin America as well, right? Where the Soviet influence was at the time. Well, it turns out that in Mongolia there was resistance against it. And many intellectuals, including artists, my own father and his colleagues, were concerned about destruction of the heritage. Urga, the monastery, was completely destroyed, as well as all other monasteries in Mongolia, to the extent that everything was completely into ashes, burned into ashes, and monks were killed in masses. And many artists who once were young kids in Urga or other monasteries, they became civilians and they were studied art, and they became very concerned with heritage, with destruction of the Mongolian language and Mongolian history and Mongolian culture. And so, as resistance to socialist realism, they were heavily debating and discussing what Mongolian painting could be or is really vis-a-vis socialist realism. And as a result of these discussions, new style was developed, invented really, and that style was intentionally named as Mongolian picture, Mongolian painting, Mongol Zorak. And not only they invented the style as visually different idiom from the socialist realist paintings, but they also added a new class for art in art school. So there was a fine arts painting class where European conventions were taught, but also oil and canvas medium was taught. But there was a new class added in 1970s called Mongolian traditional painting class. And so this resistance to a socialist realism really triggered many interesting paintings. Part of it I show in my exhibition. And this new generation of artists, Batar Zorik Bas and Cemil Urce, are sort of students of this class of traditional painting, who all graduated in this millennium, in early 2000s. And they continue with the traditional painting Mongol Zorak, but their idea of subject matter and theme is environmental damage and global pandemic. And so their art and the use of this traditional painting style is about neoliberalism and unfortunate mining political corruption that is happening in Mongolia, but also around the world, and the global pandemic of lockdown, where we were all just recently all were unfortunately experiencing it, right? So yeah, so the idea of resistance continues throughout centuries, and these artists are talking about through their art.
Brilliant stuff. Yes, agreed completely with it. Now, obviously, we've done setup today. If people are watching on YouTube or Instagram, you'll see shortly you're going to show us a few paintings on these exhibition. But before we do that, I'm just interested, I'm fascinated to know, obviously, how do you think your father would have looked at these younger generation of painters. 'Cause obviously, he sadly passed away, didn't he, at the beginning of the 21st century,
Mhm.
2001. And all these paintings, like I've done with this of future generation, mostly come some time after he sadly left us. Do you think he'd have been really interested to see the way their works developed? Or
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, definitely. The debate of what Mongol Zurak is and how Mongol Zurak contributes towards the larger, broader art scene in Mongolia was always a big question for artists in the past century, but as well as in modern times. And doing research towards this exhibition and this research, I'm finding out my father, until his passing, really, he was doing a lot of sketches and trying different styles of clouds, of plants, of animals, trying to really create that visual stylization of objects, of landscapes that, again, could be embraced under this umbrella term of Mongolian picture. And
it's
in the exhibition, I show those sketches, and I show how he was painting, for instance, sketching a camel, for instance, just an example. And then he developed that into a painting. And that is very different than a linear picture of a camel, for instance, if you paint it in an oil on canvas medium, and so on and so forth. And the new artists too, young artists too, they are thinking through the geopolitical agenda of Mongolia's situation between Russia and China, the way the political borders are now. Mongolia is sandwiched between the two large countries, and they're thinking through the commodification of culture through influence of Hollywood, for instance, Mickey Mouse and popular culture taking place in Mongolia after democracy and collapsing of socialism in 1992, and democracy starts, but there is also a lot of influence of coming from popular culture. And all this yield a very interesting art. And we're showing paintings that were made specifically for this exhibition, but also art that coming from, for instance, from 1990s that was never shown to the world, except we're showing for the first time in Venice.
indeed no. Great stuff. Now, like I said, well, I think we'll move on next. And should we show people a few examples of these works? This is
Cool.
perfect when it's on YouTube or Instagram, but we will give some depth on it for audio. Now, I know you've when you're going through the test run before, you've got at least one I want to talk about is the painting preaching about Central Asia. So if you
Mhm.
could show
Mhm.
that one, certainly in any other paintings I'll look at that and see straight away on there, when people are on there, they'll see we come struck at that. That is absolutely fantastic for a coincidence. Now, obviously, I love the actual the way this one was done. And I'm not best at person describing artwork, but the actual see if you see
Mhm.
on it there, you see that there's two heads almost like in the middle of it. So obviously there's some major
Yeah,
point
yeah,
behind this.
center. Yeah, yeah,
So tell us
yeah.
about this painting then, first of all, then.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. This is a work by Badr Zurich, and he depicts a central trio here with a central figure of Mickey Mouse. And if you see,
Oh yeah, it's Mickey Mouse, isn't it? Yeah, I didn't see that on the original.
it's a
Yeah.
menacing figure of Mickey Mouse. He's not an entertaining, jolly Mickey Mouse. It's a
No.
threatening
Yeah,
Mickey Mouse.
it's almost like it's homicidal Mickey Mouse, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
It is a scary Mickey Mouse.
Oh wow,
It
yeah.
often appears in Bardot art in this painting as well. And in fact, in the very center of the painting, because he is very concerned about this commercialization of culture and influence coming from Hollywood and generally, the generation where he is living is full of popular culture. And so he puts this Mickey Mouse as a very threatening figure.
Yeah, no.
Sarah, by,
Who were the other two people then?
and
Is one of them Stalin, that is it? On the
yes,
left.
surrounded by two our neighbor, Mongolia's neighbors, through the metaphor of Stalin and Mao Zedong, the
Right,
two historical leaders.
should have got that the second one. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's like it's if you look at the way it's done like with the Starlink and the other gentleman, there's like a halo around them, isn't there? It's like
yeah,
it makes them almost angelic and well they certainly
yeah,
weren't. They certainly
yeah,
weren't.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So his the feature of Mogudurag, as you can see from this painting, is it's very it has a very crowded brushwork. It has a lot of imagery. So the entire painting is flat. There's no linear perspective, but it's a layering of different stylized clouds and flames of fire and different figures, as you
Yeah,
can see
I
from
think I've seen
from
I
this.
think I've seen a disturbed version of Batman on the top right as well.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And the dominating color spectrum is very gray. Again, his subject matter is rather very critical of the situation in Mongolia, but also generally what he feels, his generation obsessed with commercializing of culture, and his critique and resistance against it is shown through this gray sadness of his own era. And here's this full picture, but here's the central part.
Amazing stuff indeed. That now I know you've got one or two others you want to show us today as well, haven't you? And I've not
Yeah,
necessarily
oh,
seen these, so these make it even more
yeah.
entertaining because I've not seen these next few. So
Yeah, here's my father's one painting, which was very popular during the exhibition, 7 months of the show.
oh
People
yeah,
were
because
fascinated by work. It was painted in 1991. We never showed it. We didn't have a chance to show. First time we're showing, and people were fascinated. They were asking, "What is it about?" Here's the skull, and on top there are five even more skulls, and what's happening here? And so this was painted in 1991, and I remember myself at the time watching him to paint this, and kind of watching my father being very disenchanted with socialism. He was active and truly believed in the doctrine of socialism, but he was very disenchanted when all these archives and news came out around the time of perestroika, talking about Stalinist purges and how they happened with Stalin and with his own successors in Russia as well as in Mongolia. Purges came and many people died. So he was very frustrated and very sad. And so he
yeah, I can
used
see that. I can see that this paint straight with the sadness there, but incredible anger as well.
exactly. And so this skull motif right here is actually a Buddhist motif, which in
Ah,
Buddhism, yeah, in Buddhism, it has a meaning. It references the poison inherently people are born with and is obstacle towards enlightenment. And Buddhism teaches the path towards enlightenment to overcome this poison. But he took this sort of motif and used it in his tragic disillusionment with socialism and talking about how it's utopia. So the title is very suggestive.
yeah, of course.
And
People wondered the end of utopia is that. So yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Straight away now, I have to ask you, obviously, with the painting itself, there's
uh-huh.
like a circle at the top there, isn't there, of
Mhm.
lots of triangles coming out of it. What's the significance about that?
Yeah, so here is a stylized swastika. Swastika
Oh,
is, of
I've
course,
just
some.
realised then. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So swastika does have it has a benign meaning in Buddhism. So it's a part of Buddhism. But when it was reused turned around by fascists, of course, it became a swastika of destruction of war. And so he played with this design, stylizing it again because of the purges and destruction of socialism. And if you can recognize these three figures here, this is three philosophers who became the mastermind figures of communism, right? It's
Yeah,
Marx, Engels, and Lenin. And
yeah.
unfortunately,
The three wise men, basically, isn't it? Yeah, of course.
yeah, and they were worshipped in communist countries, and they were worshipped in Mongolia as the fathers of socialist ideas. But unfortunately, those ideas didn't realize they were abused by their leaders in Soviet Union at the time, Stalin and his allies in Mongolia. And so it's unfortunate. It's very personal take on his own disenchantment with socialism and tragedy he felt. And but currently in contemporary art, this Buddhist skull motif, it became very popular among the artists, and it used across the contemporary art in Mongol Zorak, but also by the sculptors and so on and so forth. It's a very strong visual motif itself.
Yes, it is really is. I can understand with it why it is looking at it there. People looking at the video. This it's incredibly striking. That is,
Mhm.
look. I love the bit where you got like the Buddhist teeth in the middle of it and the big skull in the middle with the hole in the head. So
Mhm.
is that like a symbolism, like a bullet in the head, or is it just a third eye sort of syndrome?
Third eye syndrome and but yeah, and but it's if you look closely, it actually the frontal one is taken from the Buddhist idea, from Buddhist paintings, Buddhist symbolism, but it's surrounded by, or as you can see on the sides, it has the figures of Stalin and Choibalsan.
Yeah, of course.
Stalin,
Again,
course, the Russian leader, unfortunately, who abused the socialist ideas into the destructive ideas. And Choibalsan was his ally in Mongolia. He also oversaw the purges of many people and monks and destruction. So it is talking now about the destruction. It's not talking about Buddhist ideas, but it talks about the ideas of destruction here. Um, and here's the vertical, what you can see right here. It's actually Mongolian traditional script, which turned around. It's read from top to bottom, but it's turned around in a way again to show how everything was turned around and upside down, and it brought the chaos. So it's a painting of
its name.
sadness, of tragedy.
Yeah, it feels it straight away with that. So, I think have you got another painting you want to show us? Have you? Or I think I saw a
Yes,
third one. Yes.
yeah. So this
Oh
is another,
wow. Oh
it's
wow.
a painting by Basan Job, and it's owned by Han Art Gallery in Hong Kong. So we loaned from Han Art TZ Gallery, and it's one of the pioneering paintings where the artist creating a metaphor to resist against the political corruption. So the man in suits in the center as well on the sides, the monsters, people here representing political corrupted governments, neoliberalism, in short. And they are endorsing environmental damage and mining that brings unrepaired damage to the earth. And so in Mongolia, Mongolia is very rich with deposits, and unfortunately, so many corporations came and started digging, and they leave those lands without repair after they leave. And all this corporate wealth is resulting in damaging. Mongolia is a land of nomads, and many herders live in pastures and rangelands and herding their animals and their cattle. But when the rivers are damaged, or the land is damaged, is very detrimental to Mongolian economy. And so this painting was pioneering to kind of have this very direct critique of political corruption and neoliberalism. And you see these monstrous figures, and this is the Mongolian script, which talks about generally just leave our land, don't touch our mountains and rivers, leave our land to us. And these are the spirits of mountains and rivers coming out and begging these political figures to keep the land safe. Um, and
I've never seen anything like this painting before. I'm absolutely finding. What are those figures at the bottom there? They're almost like some sort of dogs with human faces, aren't they?
yeah, yes, those are hybrids. So those political entities, they're kind of,
Wow.
this man visualizes them as monsters. They're fighting with each other for for greed. They're led by their greed
Yeah,
for money.
that's human nature, isn't it, really? They always say like we're very good
Yeah,
at fighting within ourselves, and that's great, that
exactly.
bit there. Yeah.
And here is there's one of the figure who is sitting and watching how they become even more monsters and hybrid creatures. They fly and then they all are
Yeah,
fighting with each
they're
other.
like harpies or some of the next lot, aren't they? Yeah.
Um,
Good grief.
yeah, yeah. So
This
and
must this painting must have took absolute ages to do because there's people
mm,
look at it in the video, you can see there's so many figures on it.
mm,
It's like
mm.
it's just absolutely spellbinding.
Yeah, the Mongol Zorak is very characteristic, as you saw when preaching Central Asia, as well
Yeah.
as this. They're full of these minor details, and you can read this painting for so many, angles and perspectives, and it's very enchanting. It's very engaging. Also, there are many humorous elements as well as monstrous elements, and it's just a very interesting read, engaging, really.
Completely, completely. Oh, great. We've got one more of you want to talk about the painting
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
and
brilliant. Yes, please.
yes, and Urje is a woman artist who had two sets of paintings relating to global pandemic, and this is one of them. It's a
Yeah,
series titled Our Life, but it
yeah.
is our life in pandemic when we were so much dependent and obsessed with our smartphones, and we were exploring the world through smartphones.
I think this is a really nice contrast, this one, because obviously you said that, just clarified people, it was done in 2021. And there's
Yeah.
a lot less going on in this painting because there's only what
Mhm.
four figures round. Is that round a rose? Is it? Am I right with those some sort
Yeah,
of flower?
yeah, they're discovering in this case flower, but it's a dark painting because the times of pandemic were dark.
Yes.
And the Mongol Zorak is includes a lot of brushwork, which I mentioned, and it looks very dark. But when you look at it in real life, it's full of patterns and ornament in this darkness. Unfortunately, the slides, the photo does not capture it, but just maybe elements like this you can see,
Yes, you can.
and the value of
Yeah.
this imagery
Yeah.
is just stunning.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's incredible.
Art, just sheer artistry, sheer craftsmanship of these elements, how this darkness, we were just looking at it a couple of days ago with my students who are painting students in Venice. We were looking how the darkness is full of ornamentation, as you can maybe a little bit see here.
Yeah.
It looks just dark to you in the photograph, but it's actually full of pattern and
Yeah, you can see it. See, we see
yeah,
there's the little things in this painting. I mean, it's one of those ones. If you saw this as an exhibition, and I'm
yeah.
short-sighted, so I'd have to go and understand, put my face right up to the canvas to see all of that. But yeah, you can. Oh,
Here's
wow.
another one by the same artist. And again, we see a smartphone. He is charging, but she has three children, and here are her three children. All, the minds are all obsessed with her, with smartphone world there.
Wow, yeah, you can
And
see like it's all the colours like it's symbolising mobile phones and the little things
yeah,
like that. Yeah,
yeah,
it just shows you, I think, really with this way, it shows how different
yeah,
generations look at art in different ways. Yeah, and you can see it. The
yeah,
darkness is
yeah,
very clear in this again, but if you look at it straight, you see the little
yeah.
bits of light and that, yeah, and see the leaves dangling
yeah.
around in the darkness.
The value of this image is those lines, how it turns into the dark, and then again the bright green, and all this is just sheer artistry is just superb.
Yeah,
And
this has took some thought, this painting, because it's these
yes,
sequences, in contrast to the previous one where it's just absolutely
yeah,
going berserk with imagery. This is much
yeah,
more subtle, but I
yeah.
can really see it. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, this is my book. So
Yeah,
yeah, so these are the four fantastic artists that I showed, and I so much believe in them myself that it is unfortunate that museums haven't been, open to artists like this, and I feel sad about it. But as myself a scholar, I would like to contribute by showing them,
yeah,
and Venice is a nice place to do that. So that's why my exhibition was there.
yeah. I've been to a few places in Italy. I've been to Rome and I've been to Napoli. Not been to Venice. There's one I need to go to, definitely. But that's incredible. And it must have been that sort of case. We've been on for 7 months. Yet the place that I had it on for you must have had some real confidence in your work there. And it must have gone
Yeah.
down really, really well that straight away.
Yeah, we were very fortunate because the gallery was well situated, right in the middle of the Venice Biennale location, the major Giardini Arsenale location. So we had a large crowds of people coming. But the most exciting part was how they were reacting to these paintings and how they were sort of experiencing not only the artistry and craft and high quality of these professionally done paintings, but also learning about Mongolia from does Mongolia have art really, and
Yeah.
what kind of art they have?
I didn't know this until today, until I researched you earlier on. I thought I've learned something from this, and I find it fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and the
brilliant stuff.
comments they were writing, so sincere words of kindness, such a sincere praise they were giving to the artists, and emails they were writing to the artists and expressing they just fascination with their professional quality. And that's the reward of this exhibition that we get is the audience's their high praise and kindness that they shared with us throughout
Yeah,
the
I
seven
think
months.
what you've done is you would have educated people with this, like I said, because I've been educated with this today, and I really found it quite fascinating indeed. Reading your books after it was amazing, and to read about it. So now, obviously, now the exhibition is over. Is there any chance this exhibition could be shown anywhere else next, say in 2025?
Yes, so we were as I mentioned to you museums as I'm approaching museums for a possibility of showing, especially in United States where I'm based myself. It is unfortunate that museums haven't been, open enough. Institutions, unfortunately, close to the idea of Mongolia. As of yet, it will change, I'm sure, but it's taking a long time. And I really hope I teach my students about how the period we're living are it's fraudulent. We have wars happening, but also it's a exciting times we live in because that such movements as Black Lives Matter, they saturated and influenced, impacted our lives very much in arts and humanities. And the DEI is it's a times where we can talk and think and dream about the new realities coming true, and it's about the cultures such as Mongolia coming into our institutions. And I really hope that this exhibition one day will come to our institutions, our museums, and larger audiences in this country, in the United States and Western Europe, will see these paintings. Right now, we really keep the fingers crossed, and
Definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Now, good luck with that, definitely. So now, obviously, I get the stage of the podcast now. I do ask people what they've got planned next, but you've
Mhm.
already told me earlier on when we were talking, you've got another book in mind, haven't you? So do you
Mhm.
want to tell us about what this other book you've got in mind is about?
Yes. So in 2027, my own school, here School of Art and Design at Indiana University, we have galleries and we show contemporary art. And our galleries will show a large Mongolian contemporary art exhibition. And in conjunction, and this artist will be part of that exhibition. And that exhibition will have a book, will have a solid academic book myself will be involved with this, but also I'm expecting other scholars will be involved to co-write this book with me. And this exhibition will be first large introduction to Mongolian contemporary art. The Venice exhibition introduced one aspect of Mongolian culture, which is Mongol Zorak, but there are other fantastic artists who do performance and video art, and they are very unique and distinct. The way they approach large questions of humanity. And so I hope to show them, and I hope to write this book. And
Brilliant,
the
brilliant.
research is ongoing. I'm doing already research. I have the drafts, and I have collaborators in UK. So
Oh,
I
oh,
hope to make this happen. So
oh.
2027.
Sounds good to me. Well, we will keep in touch then, 'cause I'd love to be back on air again in 2027, definitely when this book's done. And who knows what's going to happen also. So, oh, brilliant. No, good luck with it. Definitely. I wish you all the best with that. Now, obviously, to
Thank
conclude then, obviously, social media plugs and stuff, because if
you.
people want to speak to you about possibly putting this exhibition on, say, in the UK or Europe, how do you
Mhm.
recommend they get hold of you?
So I have a website, and it's artmongolia.org, ARTMONGOLIA dot org, so artmongolia.org, and where I have my publications. If anybody's interested to look into learning more about Mongolian art, which is my mission, and contact me. So I have my email there, and I have my contact form there. So I invite any of you who are interested about Mongolian art, please do contact. And I'm happy to share my expertise and my knowledge with you.
Brilliant. Yeah, like I said, 40, without risk of repeating myself too much, it's been a fascinating podcast this today. I've learned stuff from it, and that's always a pleasure, definitely. So, but thank you again today, Orna. I really, really enjoyed this. So
Mhm.
keep in touch, and
Thank,
we'll love to have you on again in 2027, definitely, right? So,
thank you so much.
no problem. Right. Anyway, folks, yeah, that's it for another day today for Spoken Label. So me and Orna got chat on a bit further because I need to clarify a few or two bits and pieces with her, but it's been a pleasure. So thank you again today, Orna.
Mhm.
And as Don Callis over at AEW Wrestling says, more important is stay safe and stay over. And we will see you all next